Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Let me start with Ms. Schulp. Mr. Shankman indicated his opinion that I think he said every cryptocurrency, or virtually every one, easily meets the Howey test for the definition of a security. The Howey test includes the investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit through the efforts of others. So in Bitcoin, we have no corporation that controls it or issued it. We have no individual. We have no committee. It seems to me purely decentralized. Isn't it hard to establish that there's a common enterprise when there is no central authority that controls and operates it?
I agree. I don't think for Bitcoin you can meet the elements of the Howey test in multiple respects.
Right. So, would you say, as a general matter, a truly decentralized protocol, it's pretty hard to establish the common enterprise?
I completely agree. The securities laws were evolved in no small part in order to deal with questions of information asymmetry coming from managerial bodies that are doing that.
Right. Where is that asymmetry? Look, I think there's a case to be made that there should be a regulatory regime on disclosure requirements for an issuer, that there should be a regulatory regime for secondary market trading. But I think we ought to make it specific to this sector, because to try to shoehorn it into decades-old legislation that deals with different instruments, I think is very problematic. Mr. O'Leary, it seems to me that tokens are very often the tool or mechanism to incentivize people to validate and maintain a distributed ledger. Now, you can gamble with them. You can speculate as to what a given token is going to be worth. But it seems to me that underlying blockchain technology is potentially extremely powerful, is actually already being used in a variety of ways. Could you address this notion that the only possible use is a zero-sum gambling enterprise?
No, I don't agree with that at all. It's preposterous to say that. The potential of blockchain technology in authenticating physical assets and contracts and tokens, as you suggest, is incredibly powerful. In fact, I think what's going to happen as we peel the onion on FTX over the next year or two is the shining outcome of the success of the blockchain to track these assets will become the focus of everybody. We will realize every security or token that left FTX, left Alameda, got traded between shareholders, all tracked irrefutably on the blockchain. The power of this technology is very harnessable, very powerful, and of course we should lead the world in it because so much of it is developed here. The hottest hands coming out of MIT right now, where do they want to work? A third of the class. They want to work on the blockchain. You can't take that much potential and not expect extraordinary outcomes. This is a remarkable technology. Yes, it requires regulation, but if you just ask where the hot hands are going, the great engineers, this is where they're going. So, we train them here, and then we kick them out of the country so they do their work somewhere else.
So let me ask you directly. You were an investor in FTX, and I know you've spoken frequently with Sam Bankman-Fried over an extended period of time. Why do you believe FTX failed?
I have an opinion. I don't have the records. Here it is. After my accounts were stripped of all of their assets and all of the accounting and trade information, I couldn't get answers from any of the executives in the firm, so I simply called Sam Bankman-Fried and said, "Where is the money, Sam?" He said he had been refused access to the servers. He no longer knew. I said, "Okay, let's step back. This is a simple case in my mind of where did the money go?" And I said, "Sam, walk me back 24 months. Tell me the use of proceeds of the assets of your company. Where did you spend it?" And then he told me about a transaction that occurred over the last 24 months, the repurchase of his shares from Binance, his competitor. I didn't know this at the time, but at some point, CZ or Binance, who runs Binance, purchased 20% ownership in Sam Bankman-Fried's firm for seed stock. And then, over time, and I asked him, what would compel you to spend $2 billion was the number he was giving me at that time. Later, in a subsequent conversation, about 24 hours later, he told me it could have been as much as $3 billion to buy back the shares from CZ. I asked him, what would compel you to do that? Why wouldn't you keep your assets on your balance sheet? And why would you offer this to just one shareholder? He said, because every time we went to get licensed in different jurisdictions, because you must understand the prize of crypto is to get regulated. For all the talk we say about Bitcoin and everything else, no institutions own this. I work for the sovereign wealth and pension plans. They don't touch this stuff because it's unregulated. Between these two, let's call them frenemies, because they obviously were potentially the two largest shareholders in the firm, they had a disagreement. They had a falling apart. Apparently, according to Sam Bankman-Fried, CZ would not comply with the regulators' request in these different geographies, these different jurisdictions, to provide the data that would clear them for a license. He withheld it, according to Sam Bankman-Fried. The only option the management and Sam Bankman-Fried had was to buy him out at an extraordinary valuation of close to $32 billion, less apparently a 15% discount. That stripped the balance sheet of assets. You ask me why it went bankrupt? Go to the last week. All of a sudden, in social media, CZ is asking for another $500 million. He wants to do a block trade of FTT, or the proprietary token of FTX. Wants it converted back to fiat. Why would you put that out there? You know it's going to push down the pressure. It's going to push down the value of that coin dramatically, and that's exactly what happened. Every trader knows if you have a large block trade, you go negotiate a clearing price with other buyers and you do the transaction. In my view, my personal opinion, these two behemoths that own the unregulated market together and grew these incredible businesses in terms of growth were at war with each other. And one put the other out of business intentionally. Now, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe there's nothing wrong with love and war. But Binance is a massive, unregulated, global monopoly now. They put FTX out of business. Now, lots of other reasons, I'm sure, but that's my personal opinion. That is what Sam Bankman-Fried told me in terms of where the assets went. Why should we care? Single reason. I'm a shareholder. You tell me the two largest shareholders do a transaction together, that's a related party transaction. I'm not sure that's okay. Maybe I want a Madoff clawback on those proceeds. Maybe I want to pursue that.
Mr. O'Leary, I'm sorry, you're about 3 minutes over. You have a follow-up, Senator Toomey?
I had another topic, so if we do a second round, I'll take it up then. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think during the course of this hearing, we haven't talked as much as we ought to about some of the, I think, really exciting and terrific applications that the crypto ecosystem makes possible. One of the categories that comes to mind is the ability to use stablecoins in conjunction with smart contracts. Basically, it turns into what I think of as programmable money, where you can write into the code a payment that will occur based on some exogenous and verifiable event, and the payment requires no human intervention. It just happens when the exogenous event occurs. So, Ms. Schulp, I wonder, first of all, could you comment on whether you think there's a lot of future in this idea of programmable money? And then secondly, I think you're familiar with the legislative framework that I've laid out for stablecoins. I think the heart of that is the requirement that we have 100% cash and cash equivalents as a backing for a stablecoin, and oversight by the OCC, but not the Fed. And I wonder if you would comment also on whether you think that is the right approach to regulating stablecoins.
Of course. So I do believe that stablecoins have a lot of promise, not only in terms of the programmable money concept that you state, but also in terms of just being a faster and more stable way to work within a digital ecosystem rather than relying on kind of our current creaky payment rails. Stablecoins can offer a lot of alternatives in that space where we have truly digital money. I am familiar with your legislation, and I think that it addresses what is one of the, I think, most obvious risks in the stablecoin space, which is the concern that stablecoin issuers do not have stable coins because the reserves that they have behind them might not be what they say they are. I think that there are a number of ways that you can go about creating a regulatory regime to take account of that risk. I myself have proposed kind of a disclosure-based framework that could be put into place by something like the SEC. In fact, it's very similar to the disclosure framework that you have proposed with the OCC. I do think it's important to separate that type of regulatory function from the federal monetary regulator so that the Federal Reserve is not the one charged with handling regulation of kind of a money substitute here. There's a lot of conflicts of interest that can exist in that space, and I think it's wise to keep stablecoin regulation, which is something that I think is kind of low-hanging fruit at this point. There's obvious risks, and I think there are pretty obvious ways to deal with those risks in pretty simple fashion. But we should keep that type of regulation separate and apart from monetary regulation.
Thank you.
Thank you.